2 years?
2 years. Sí. Estoy aprendiendo español, pero no, mi español no es tan bueno, ¿cómo se dice? Para tener una charla en español, pero próximo.
No, you speak Spanish very good. Yeah.
Pero mi vocabulario es muy pequeño.
Ya. Sí, eso nos pasa a todos.
Okay. I don't know how this is supposed to work. Should I start presenting or?
No, relax. I'm gonna give you the word. Don't worry. One second. People out there on YouTube, can you hear me? They say that yes, they can. Very nice. So, Carl, yes, they can hear us. Cool. So thank you for letting me know that, Carolina. Welcome everybody to the meetup of this month. We have a special guest today. It's from the beautiful country of Poland. So we have a Viking today talking about Python and Google Cloud platforms. So without adding anything else, I want to introduce, I'm going to try to pronounce his name in Polish. So it's something like Krzysztof Wojdat. Welcome to the Medellín Python meetup. And the microphone is all yours, sir.
Very close. Thank you very much. Okay, let me start presentation. Are you seeing the presentation, the slide?
I am.
Okay. Entonces, hola a todos. Hi, my name is Chris. I'm, as Jorge said, from Poland. I've been living in Medellín for 2 years, pero mi español no es tan bueno para tener la charla en español, pero próxima. And we're going to be talking today about instrumentation of your code with OpenTelemetry library and Google App Engine. Let's start with making sure that everybody's on the same page. What is called instrumentation? Instrumentation refers to the measure of product performance and our ability to diagnose errors, and writing trace information. So basically, we want to know what's happening with their code. This is something that every one of us has done before in different languages and in a different fashion. I am guilty of writing those 3 statements multiple times when I'm trying to debug something on my local machine. But sometimes you cannot just use print statements. Sometimes you need something more. You use logs, something like that. And usually you use also something that is called instrumentation technology, which is basically some additional library that somebody else wrote in order to have an easier way to instrument your code, and one that doesn't create so much overhead in what you're writing. So today we are going to be taking the tracing portion of that group and discussing this thing. So what is tracing? Like, the definition is fairly simple. It's specialized use of logging to record information about programs and execution. It's something that you have seen multiple times, most likely if you're working in web development and you're checking out the network tab. You can see those traces in your developer tools tab, and they basically tell you, what is happening at a certain point, which request is happening. And we can have something similar for the code that runs in our backend. Now, tracing itself is part of a larger concept, which is called observability. We're not going to be discussing that in full, but I urge you to go and check it out. It's basically the notion of how to debug our systems, how to answer questions that are a little bit more complicated, like the one that we have here, the characteristics. What were the characteristics of the queries that timed out after 500 milliseconds, what they shared in common, things like that. And instrumentation is something that gives us the data, the telemetry, to gain observability. I've taken this from the OpenTelemetry documentation and the workshop resources. I urge you and encourage you to check them out yourself. They are very thorough. And them and Honeycomb, they are basically the people who introduced, I think, this to greater amount of people. Now, where does OpenTelemetry fit into this this concept? OpenTelemetry is a project that provides us a set of APIs and libraries in many different languages that offer us the tools for capturing those traces and exporting them into a place, into another different tool that will give us the ability to visualize them and analyze them in full. The links here on the screen are to the project itself, their GitHub repository. It's currently in beta, but as you can see here, they have already 29 repositories and implementations in many different languages, C++, JavaScript, .NET, and of course, Python, which is going to be the one that we're going to be messing around with today. So, the concepts for tracing. Each trace itself consists of spans, and each span is like a single unit of work that you are performing in your system. It typically, like we have here on the slide, encapsulate a single operation. It's start, it's finish, the timestamp, and the parent span that was generated. I'm going to go back a little bit to the screenshot that were in the slide before. In here, this thing itself, the whole thing is a trace. Each of those is a span. So this is the root span that is mentioned there, which encapsulate the entire operation, and each of the smaller spans encapsulate a single call, a single function. So yes, moving on, trace, as mentioned, is defined by its spans. There you have here a very advanced definition of them, but basically just remember that there is a single trace that is the root trace, and every single one of those child traces can be what's the word I'm looking for? Can be traced to its parent. Now, distributed context is something that we're going to touch later on, but this is the thing that makes tracing distributed tracing and enables us to collect multiple different microservices and have a single graph that shows us and makes it easier for us to find answers to the questions that we might have about our code out of many different sources. Okay, so let's show you guys a very simple sample. So this is a. Did I break it? Yeah, I broke it again. No.
Chris, sorry to interrupt. Is it possible to increase the size of the font a little bit?
Of course. Of course. Well, it seems that I have lost. Anybody can help me? How do I increase the font size in PyCharm on a Mac? I'm not a. Lo siento.
Google says that Control plus Alt plus S.
Control Alt
S.
Nope. Huh.
Maybe using the menu options.
How to increase code font size? Control plus mouse wheel. No. File, settings, editor, general. There we go. There we go.
Perfect. Let me confirm with people out there on YouTube. Is it okay, the size of the font? Wait a second, Chris, that usually we have a delay.
That's okay. I'm trying to get back the tabs I had before. You can do it like this.
Great, they're saying that yes. So we're ready to continue.
Okay. So here we can see a very simple Flask app. There's some setup the app consists of a single root route and two functions, each being called one by another. So the root calls foo, and foo calls bar. And if we execute this thing, you can see that yes, indeed, it works. Now, the interesting part happens in the console. As we can see, we receive messages, hello world from OpenTelemetry Python. We have value 1 going deeper, value 1 going even deeper. Those are the messages that were printed out here by the functions. But also, we have something here. Those are the traces that were logged. No, those are the spans, and the entire thing is a trace that were logged into the console. So here we can see the name of the trace, the root trace. Here we can see the next one that started here, and we can see the final one that started here. Now, this thing requires a little bit of setup. As we can see here, we have to import the trace from OpenTelemetry. We had to import the trace provider and set up a console span exporter and a simple export span processor. This is a very basic setup that is taken from the documentation page, but it makes it possible for us to have the spans printed out in our console. This should be used mostly for development purposes to make sure that everything works as it should. But it also introduces a couple of interesting concepts. One, that we can pass our own values as the name of the span, so we can distinguish them from one another, and that as we have a root span, every single other span that is started inside it is automatically marked as its child. So they are connected one to another. Now, this again is not that much that's representative, but the best way to realize what are the values of tracing are by visualizing it. Now, there are many places to which you can export your traces to have them visualized. Honeycomb.io offers one. Cloudtrace, which is something that we're going to be using, is another. Jaeger and Prometheus are different ones. So if you don't want to use GCP and want to try something on your local machine, you can also use them. I know for sure that there is a Docker image that you can try on your local machine to have to utilize Jaeger tracing. However, we are going to be using Cloudtrace. Now, Cloudtrace is a service that is provided by GCP. Oops, that's done. It collects data from various different sources and presents them in a fairly easy to understand way. And we can see here, this is its page. And it's fairly simple to set it up. Documentation is OK. And personally, I think it's a nice entry point to this thing as well. Now, requirements for using Cloudtrace in tandem with GCP. Well, first of all, you need a Google Cloud project, because otherwise the traces have nowhere to go. Cloudtrace API needs to be enabled for your project. It's very possible that this is already activated, and you need to somehow connect your application to the project. Now, there are many ways that you can do this, either by running the project itself on Google App Engine. You can do this through using the Google Application Credentials environment variable, which points to a service account file that you created before. So then you can connect something that is nowhere near GCP to have its traces sent there. Or if you're running something on your local machine, you can use Google SDK to authenticate your machine and send traces there. Okay, but let's take a look at a few examples. So let's take the same Flask application and let's deploy this thing to, let's have this thing running on Google App Engine. So I actually deployed it earlier. So we'll be sure that everything actually works. Now, the difference between the code in the applications is that it doesn't use the console exporter. It uses the Cloudtrace span exporter, which is a separate library that we have to install apart from the regular API and SDK. And we initialize it here in place of the console exporter. The only other difference that we have here in the code is that I added some sleeps so that so it's going to be easier for us to see what is actually happening. Okay. Like I said, I have this thing already deployed, so I won't be deploying right now. But because Murphy's law exists, my setup that I have prepared earlier disappeared. Okay. It's gonna take a little time because we are switching versions. But we can see that again, it works. Now, I'll roll back a little bit because I think I may skip a portion that you guys might want to see. Now, when we were talking about the requirements, well, the Google Cloud project, you can see that it's here. It has been already created, enabling Cloudtrace API. Now, if you don't know where you do that in Google App Engine, just need to go here to APIs and services, go to the dashboard, and here we have the list of the APIs that we have, and you can look for Cloudtrace API. You can select it, and we can see that this thing works right now in my project. If it wouldn't, then here we would have the button for enabling API. Now it's for disabling. So obviously that works. Now, the second portion, the third portion, the connecting application to the project. You're not going to see it here at this moment because my app is running right now on Google App Engine. So this is taken care of by Google itself. But further, you'll see how I'm connecting using setting the Google application credentials and connecting using service account file. But that's going to be at the end. And let's go back. Sorry for the branch. So we deployed the Flask application with traces enabled. We went to the URL. We saw that it works. Where can we see our traces? We need to find the trace menu in the hamburger list, and let's just click trace list. And there it is. We have an overview of all the traces that were registered. We have the time span. There we go. Let's make this bigger. We have the time span, and we have the trace itself. Here we can see the list of them. And as you can see, the name of the trace that I had was taken as the name of the overall thing. And here we can see each of the spans that were executed. We can see the root one. We can see the execution of the second one and the third one. They're not very verbose here, but this is because I haven't set any labels by myself by hand. Now, what if you don't want to set any labels by hand by yourself? Well, the good thing about OpenTelemetry project is that it offers a lot of integrations to different frameworks. For instance, something like Flask integration exists, which we are going to use right now. And later on, go into the code and see how it works. We go back to the same URL. Let's wait a little bit for this to load. Okay, there we go. Let's refresh this. And here we see another trace. So let's check this one out. It's fairly the same, right? Now, when we click on this path, oh, there we go. No. Okay. Nope. Nope. Where are you? Again. And again. Takes a little time, sometimes. That's integration, yes. Nope. Well, Google does use some internal, there we go. No? Okay. Decent.
Live coding, very excited, man.
Yeah. I have never seen a live coding session that worked completely. I thought I was prepared by deploying this thing in advance. Apparently, I wasn't. Murphy's Law works. Okay, perhaps Google wants me to actually show you that how I deploy everything. Yeah. Okay, one last. Maybe it'll appear right now.
Chris,
Nope.
Another favor, please. Could you zoom in the browser?
I will after I deploy the code to make sure that the thing that I want to be displayed is actually there.
Sure thing, man. Thank you.
Okay, so this is what I was hoping would be deployed. You can see another change in the code, which is we've added something that is called Flask instrumenter. And here, right after the app was created, we have called it and instrumented our application. Now, what does this mean? As you can see, we don't have any trace started here in the root route. The thing that the instrumenter does is it instruments, sorry for the repetition, all the stuff that comes from Flask. So while here in foo and in bar we have created a trace or a span by hand, we don't need to do it. In the methods that are respond to routes. It also adds additional labels that we should be able to see in the span itself. Okay.
That's a very Colombian dog.
Yeah. Okay. Let's make sure that this is there. Now everything will break. Let's see. Did it appear here? Oh, no, it's still that. Okay. Let's wait.
You are even deploying on live, man. That's
Yes, I know. I don't know what's happening. I did everything to avoid live coding.
Man, thank God you are not an investor.
Thanks God, there are no investors watching. Okay. There we go. Let's go to the link. And let's do right by the people. Oh. Oh. Okay. Really? Okay, based on it works, can you tell me if 300 zoom is okay or?
I think it looks great. It's 300. Thank you.
Okay, so let's go back to the trace itself. Now this thing should be here. Maybe I deployed the wrong application with the wrong name. Yes, there we can see it. Let's go back to the regular route, and you can see here we have the labels, fairly empty, only the agent itself. And here with the Flask instrumentation, we have a bunch of additional information, like the server name, the status code, the port on which the server is running, all those things that the Flask instrumenter gives us for free. Now, you can also set those by hand, by yourself, which is also one of the nice things about tracing, that you can have additional data that you can use to analyze stuff, data that might be a little bit difficult to add with simple logs. So this is this. But you might still think that this is not that impressive, that maybe you could have similar information through logging. Well, I want to show you as well an example using IO HTTP and some async. So I'm going to try to do this again, and we'll see if this will work, or will I have to deploy this again. So we'll try to do it. You know what? Let's just go for it and deploy everything. Let's switch to the IO HTTP application. Okay, so this is our IO HTTP application. It follows a similar pattern, but for those of you who are not familiar with IO HTTP, this will be this is the rough outline. This is the initialization function, which we call, like we would just call flask to get the app. Inside it, we are creating the application. We are adding a route, and this is the thing that is going to be called when we go to the index. This thing here is us adding the trace config to get similar instrumentation for IO HTTP calls as we had with Flask. Now, what this function will do? This function, this application will call hello async. This is our hello async. What hello async will do is it will start a root trace. It will create 3 awaitables through which, as you can probably figure out, they are going to call google.com, reddit.com, and youtube.com using this function, which you will use the IO HTTP client session to perform async GET requests. Now, this is just async IOs as completed, which will run through all of those things. And at the end, it'll print it works in the same fashion as it did before. Now, as you can see here in the root or the main function that is going to be executed, we actually do create the root span. And this is because IO HTTP itself, IO HTTP server, doesn't have the instrumentation. The thing that we are creating is for the client session itself. So we will get additional information, but only from the client requests. Okay. And let's be lazy.
Chris, while this gets deployed, one question we got from the chat says that somebody wants to know if you have been in a PyCon Colombia as a speaker, and if so, which conference or which talks have you given?
I haven't given any talks on PyCon Colombia. Unfortunately, I was in PyCon Colombia in 2019 only as a participant. The 2020 one I skipped. Wait, was it? Yes, it happened right before the quarantine, right? And I haven't given any talk there. But together with Jorge and our friend Santiago, we went to PyCon Poland. And there I had a talk about migrating from Python 2 to Python 3, also on Google App Engine, as you can imagine.
Cool.
Okay, and let's hope this thing works. It does. At least it says so. Okay, let's refresh this thing. Maybe let's go with this. And there we go. So here's one of the additional advantages. We can clearly see that the functions were called in an async fashion. We have the root span, we have the get page function, and another get page function, and another get page function. And here we have the thing that we have instrumented and to which we didn't have any code by ourselves, which are the HTTP calls. And in them you can see those additional information we were talking about. Kinda nice. Now, while introducing the concept, where is? Yes, here we go. While introducing the concept of the traces, I mentioned distributed context, which means something that contains tracing identifier stacks, which enable us combining different services and having a single trace that tells us what is happening across multiple services, right? So let's try to give an example of this thing. So I'm going to try to do this. Migrate traffic, migrate. I have created a different version. There you go. No. This one. Different version of the application that uses distributed context. Now, as you can see, it starts fairly the same. We have the first function, we have the second function, and we have the final one. But here, there's a little bit of mess, and I will try to explain right now. As we are using the context manager to get the span that we created, we are grabbing its context, and we are creating our custom header that is called, span trace ID, to which we are adding our trace ID, and we are going to be sending a request to the application, the IOHTTP async application with this header. Now, so you know, what are the changes that were made to the IOHTTP application? Again, same application as before. But those things are not that important for us. For us, the important thing is here. We are getting in a very unsecure fashion, the header that we sent. We are grabbing the trace ID, converting it to an int, and we are creating an additional span context. We are giving it the trace ID that was created on the local application, some random span ID, and this is not important for us, but this is important. We are marking it as remote. And then the application executes as it did before. So let's switch back to the Flask application. And I also mentioned that I'll be showing you how to connect this thing to Cloudtrace. Here, we have a service account file that I have created earlier. How do you create a service account file? You go to your now it's in English, and now I might be a little bit lost, for which I am sorry. And we can see that we have service accounts here. And for this one, I have created a key. Now, I won't be able to show you how to create that key and download it again, because this is a one-time operation. But basically, using this IAM and admin features, you are able to create something that looks like this. And then what you need to do you know what? Let's show you how it fails first. So I will try to authenticate using. There we go. I have authenticated using my own personal account, which is not the same as the application's account. Let's try to run the application. As you can see, we get a bunch of warnings about using my own personal credentials. And let's go to the site. Again, this is on my local machine, right? No? Hello?
We are here, yes.
Oh no, I was talking to the program. I'm sorry. It works as we can see, but when we go to our logging, our console messages, we can see that while some things were being printed, we have a bunch of tracebacks, and one of them tells us that permission denied was returned. The caller does not have permission, and that is because I personally don't have the permission to use that service, the Cloudtrace, right? The application does. So let's tell our application to use the service account file that was created before. Okay? And let's run it again. As you can see, no warnings. And here we have the get, right? So let's call our applications here. It's going to take a little bit of time. Remember that there are the sleep statements everywhere to make sure that something is being recorded. There we go. And let's go to the trace list. Yeah, it auto-reloaded. And there we go. Here you can see the amazing power of distributed tracing. Those three things are the ones that were registered from my locally running application, but those were registered from the IO-HTTP application that was deployed earlier. So you can see two different microservices, let's call them, communicating with each other. And now we can see how that happened. We can see the first span, and we can see the second span of different applications, but they are still connected. They are still part of the same request. So if something were to happen in one of the three async calls, we would be able to go here and see and verify that, oh, something happened in, Google failed, and we weren't able to get a response from Google. And this is the, let's call it additional microservice, because this could have been additional microservice that we would need it to debug. And that is it. That is it. I mean, that is it for the presentation, and not with tracing. As you can see, as you maybe were able to see, there are a bunch of additional things that we can talk about regarding this, regarding observability. But the stuff that you just saw is just the tip of the iceberg. So if we were to have to talk about all of them and talk about observability, this would take us much, much, much longer. So I hope that this little presentation intrigued you a little bit, show you some additional tools that you can use. And in the future, will make your life easier, because it's going to be much simpler for you to debug your own cloud deployed applications. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you enjoyed this.
Thank you very much, Chris. Really appreciate your effort and all the examples, and also the risk you took for deploying this. Like, oh my goodness.
It eventually worked.
Yeah.
There's eventual consistency.
Right, so we got till now one question. Mauricio Vasquez is asking, is Huge using OpenTelemetry in production now?
No, it's still in beta.
Right. OpenTelemetry is in beta, but then he's asking if Huge is using it.
Nope.
No. Okay, no, Mauricio.
But we are waiting to use it. But are you asking because you have found some sort of a critical vulnerability and you want to hack us? No, that's just joking. No, we are not using it yet, but we have played around with it, and we are waiting to be able to use it in production.
Cool. Is there any other question that you want to ask? Okay, another question. Are you running OpenTracing?
OpenTracing, that's the one. Okay, so OpenTracing, if I recall correctly, is the thing that merged with OpenCensus, and that is the thing that created OpenTelemetry. So we are not running it right now. So the thing is that before we were using Google App Engine with Python 2, and actually App Engine's SDK had very nice integration with its various different services, and we didn't need open tracing or telemetry or OpenCensus to get traces. Now, since our services had to move and are still in process of moving, we are adding different ways. We are exploring different ways of getting the telemetry that we want. The thing is that OpenTelemetry itself is marked by Google as the new thing to use, and the other ones are supposedly phased out. But since it's still in beta, then we don't have it yet. But yes, we have heard about OpenTracing.
You're not gonna believe why he was asking, man. That's the beauty of the community.
Mm-hmm.
Mauricio is saying that, nope, I'm just asking because I contributed to the project, and it is nice to see people around the world using it. So you see, you never know when you're gonna find the author of a library you're using.
Which one, OpenTracing or OpenTelemetry?
Which one, Mauricio? Might be OpenTelemetry.
Well, if it is OpenTelemetry, it's fantastic. If it was OpenTracing, I'm sure it was fantastic as well, and I wish I had found about it sooner. And the documentation that the guys at OpenTelemetry have is pretty much amazing, and it's nice to see how much effort they are putting into promoting the better way of doing cloud. So thank you, Mauricio.
Yeah, OpenTelemetry Python, my friend.
Super.
So fantastic. More questions. While we get a few more questions, Chris, I'd like to ask if I want to reach out, how can I find you out there?
Oh boy, I didn't think of all of the things. I didn't think that anybody would want to reach out to me. To my email address, I guess. If you have any additional questions that you would like to ask, here is my here is my email address. Feel free. I don't know if it showed up.
Can I copy this there to the chat?
Yeah, sure. If I'll start getting weird messages, I'll just start marking them as spam. I'm not pronouncing it because it's something that it's kritokrator@gmail.com. I'm one of those people who created their email address when they were 15, and I refuse to change it as time goes by. So there you go. It's also my Twitter handle, but I don't really use Twitter. I just lurk and browse and look for stuff, so I don't post things there.
Cool. So if there are any more questions, then I believe we can be closing the meetup, man. Thank you very much again for your time, for this presentation. I think it is the first one, at least this year. I don't know, maybe Carolina, Juan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but might be the first one in which we have a foreigner. So thank you again, sir.
No problem. It was an honor to be asked, and it was an amazing experience to talk to you guys. Hopefully, at some point, we'll be able to do this face-to-face.
Woohoo! Yes.
Woohoo, indeed.
So, Carol, what's next? Cool. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and to like the video if you can, please.